We are recording 3, 2, and 1. Each and every Tuesday here on the Locked On Big Ten podcast, it is the state of the program or even the state of the conference. Right now is a sad state of affairs in the Big Ten as we look at what the Big Ten has done or has not done well in the NCAA Tournament. So hello, everybody, and welcome to the Locked On Big Ten podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ben Stevens. It is Tuesday, March 23rd, and joining us on today's episode from the jump, it is Brandon Simberg. He is a men's basketball beat writer for the Daily Illini on campus in Champaign, Illinois, has covered the Illinois Fighting Illini all year. They seem to be the Big Ten's best shot at winning a national championship, but getting bounced from the round of 32 by their in-state foes, Loyola-Chicago, on Sunday. We will also hear a little bit of my conversation with the host of Locked On Hawkeyes, Andrew Wade, after Iowa got bounced on Monday from the round of 32 by Oregon. If you can't tell, it hasn't been a great 72 hours for the Big Ten Conference, but it is great anytime I get to speak to Brandon Simberg. So, Brandon, thank you for coming back on the podcast.
Yeah, Ben, thanks for having me. I know this has been a rough few days for the Big Ten, so I'm glad I could uplift your mood. And hey, as a Syracuse grad, the Orange look great right now. They're in the Sweet 16. Jim Boeheim is a double-digit seed, man. That guy works wonders. So
there's something about that 2-3 zone. Maybe I'll try to reach out to some Big Ten coaches and get that implemented a little bit more throughout the next Big Ten basketball season. But as we focus on the end of this one, we go to Illinois and Loyola on Sunday. Round of 32 matchup. A lot of people can make the argument it shouldn't have been a round of 32 matchup. Loyola very undervalued on that 8 seed line. But Brandon, I have to ask you, what went wrong for Illinois against the Ramblers this Sunday?
Yeah, I think it was the culmination of just everything going wrong for Illinois, and that's a broad statement, but I mean, they've been able, even when Ayo Dosunmu has had off games, they've been able to kind of overcome that because of Trent Frazier stepping up or DeMonte Williams or Andre Curbelo. And yeah, I mean, Loyola's defense against Ayo was fantastic. I hadn't really seen anything like it where they would just trap him on all ball screens or make sure he wouldn't use the ball screens and really take him to his left hand, which I know he's been more right-hand dominant, but his inability to go left as well as he can go right was really brought out in the matchup. And then Frazier just didn't bring it. He was 1 for 10 from the field, 0 for 5 from 3. DeMonte Williams, also not his best game, 21 minutes, 0 for 3 from the field. So to have a 1 of 13 shooting day from your 2 combined seniors it's tough. And then paired with Ayo Dosunmu having just 9 points and 6 turnovers, it's almost impossible to overcome. And as a result, Loyola was beating them for 40 minutes. Illinois didn't lead for a second. They led from wire to wire. So that's what happens when your stars and your role guys don't really show up.
The Fighting Illini entered Sunday's game, winning 15 of their last 16 games, of course, in the March Madness tournament. 1 loss, and you are done. So Illinois season over, and a lot was made on Sunday about the coaching matchup between Porter Moser of Loyola-Chicago and Brad Underwood, of course, of Illinois. Who do you think had the edge and why?
Yeah, I mean, I think Porter Moser, I'm not saying he's a better coach right now, but in that game on Sunday, he did a much better job. He looked at the matchup and said, Kofi Coburn's a guy with slower feet and can defend around the rim, but they put him in so many actions on the perimeter. They had Cameron Krutwig, the big man who Kofi was guarding. They had him as the primary ball handler a lot of times, and he would do a lot of dribble handoffs and then screen, kind of causing Coburn to pick between the 2 guys, and Loyola's guards were quick enough to get past Coburn or Coburn would commit to the guard, and then Krutwig was open. So I thought Moser did a really good job with mixing it up and mixing up the actions to kind of get his guys looks. And, Illinois, their base offense all year has been like a high ball screen between Ayo and Kofi. And it seems simple, but when you have one of the best guards in the country and one of the best lob threats and roll threats in Kofi Coburn, it's hard to stop. But again, the Ramblers took them out of their actions, trapped Dosunmu, made sure he couldn't get into the ball screens, pressured the ball handlers. And I think that came down to game plan and coaching. I thought Underwood did a really good job this year, but I think he was just outmatched by another really good coach in Porter Moser on Sunday.
You saw Cam Krutwig and his ability to hedge those ball screens. It confused Ayo Dosunmu at times. So you mentioned that Porter Moser had the advantage over Brad Underwood on Sunday. If you were in Brad Underwood's shoes or on his staff, what adjustments would you have made at the halftime or in that second half to try to free up Illinois a little bit?
Yeah, it's tough to say because I don't know what kind of plays they have in their repertoire, but maybe instead of putting DeSumo on the ball, you have Andre Curbelo on the ball, and put DeSumo off the ball, get him in some off-ball screens, some pin downs, some actions where he's kind of going towards his right, so you can get him going that way. I feel like a lot of times when DeSumo caught the ball, it was just kind of catch and stand or just dribble it up. So I don't think they did a ton to kind of get him going or get him in rhythm. And they have other capable ball handlers in Andre Curbelo, and then Adam Miller had a really good game too, and they didn't really seem to go to him as much as I thought they could have. He took just 6 shots, but he was an effective 4 for 6 in 26 minutes. So I think maybe recognizing that Miller was the hot hand and the guy to go to could have been effective.
Kofi Coburn also had 21 points. He was 7 of 8 from the free throw line. You look at the box score and you say that was a good game, but he was trapped relentlessly when he was in the post and had a hard time defensively guarding Cam Krutwig. You mentioned Ayo Dosunmu, 9 points, 6 turnovers, no free throws even attempted out of Illinois star guard. And what was likely his last game in an Illinois Fighting Illini jersey, what do you think didn't work for Ayo on Sunday against Loyola-Chicago?
They hadn't seen a defense that good all season. I mean, Loyola is now up to Loyola's back to number 1 on defensive KenPom. They just hadn't seen a defense like that all season, and the way they trapped and the way they pressured. And it wasn't that they were overly long or overly fast. So they've seen athletic teams like a Baylor or a long team like a Michigan. It was the fact that they were so sound in their defensive rotations. I mean, it felt like Loyola was playing with 6 defenders in that first half. It literally felt like they had an extra guy because even trapping Ayo, which should lead to a 4-on-3, they recovered perfectly. So I just don't think they'd seen a defense that fundamentally sound and just so condensed. It was really impressive what Loyola did. I give them a lot of credit.
And I'm very cognizant of the fact that Brandon Simberg does not have all the answers, yet he is one of the brightest basketball minds that I have spoken to in the Big Ten Conference. So I pose these questions to him. He's obviously not inside Illinois' huddle. He doesn't know what exactly went wrong for the Illini on Sunday, but he is a very smart man, and that's why we ask him these questions, and we appreciate his time and his answers. So when we look bigger picture, Illinois finishes off the year getting eliminated in the round of 32. This was a special group who had their sights set on making a run to the national championship, trying to cut down the nets on April 5th. How do you think Illinois fans should remember this season for the Illini?
That's a tough question because ultimately, they didn't – I know there's controversy over it, but they weren't awarded the Big Ten regular season championship, which – it's kind of a disappointment. They did win the Big Ten tournament championship, so that is like something to hang your hat on, some kind of hardware. But yeah, like you said, this Illinois team had hopes and aspirations and 2 All-Americans, and they haven't been to a Sweet 16 since 2005. And they felt like this was kind of the year to break through. And so I think the fan base has a right to feel disappointed and feel disappointed and just upset about what happened because you look at their bracket now, and I'm not saying like Oregon State or Houston or Syracuse aren't capable teams, but the region kind of cleared up for them to make a real run. And it's just like, if we only hit a few more shots, like it's definitely disappointing considering they hadn't been in that position before. Now, I will say this isn't like 2013 where they're going to go on another 8-year tournament drought. Brad Underwood has the program going in the right direction, and I fully expect them to be back in the tournament next season and for many seasons to come. But it's so hard to stumble into 2 All-Americans on the same team, kind of both in their primes. Like, I don't know when they can get back to a Final Four. This felt like their shot. So I think long-term and compared to where Illinois has been in the past few years, Illinois fans should be happy with where the program's at and happy that they were so competitive all year and in the national spotlight and able to talk some trash to some other Big Ten teams. But definitely over the next few weeks, as you see other teams advance in March Madness that Illinois was probably better than during the regular season, I think the Illini fans are going to be a bit upset.
A little bit of a promise unfulfilled, if you will. And the Midwest region was a gauntlet of a region. The top 4 seeds, all very strong for Illinois to draw Loyola-Chicago in the round of 32. You can make your arguments there, and I think they are sound. At a certain point, though, you do need to beat the best teams on your deep run in March to get to a national championship game. Maybe it shouldn't have happened in the round of 32, but they were going to have to beat a Loyola-Chicago or even better team than that to make a run to the national championship game. Loyola-Chicago, by the way, just looked like the better team, not just pulled off a good upset upset and a good opportunity on Sunday afternoon, but the better team over the Illini on Sunday. So Brandon Simberg, a men's basketball beat reporter for the Daily Illini in Champaign, Illinois, not only covers Illinois basketball great, but the Big Ten in general. As I mentioned at the top of this show, it is a sad state of the program on this Locked On Big Ten podcast because the Big Ten has struggled. Now 6-7 in the NCAA tournament as it stands at the moment. Brandon and I recording based on some scheduling issues prior to Michigan and Maryland playing in the round of 32 on Monday night. There is a chance, Brandon, as we sit here, the Big Ten might not have a team play in the Sweet 16. I never thought I would utter those words. I didn't think I would be able to say that about getting to the Final Four. What have you made of the Big Ten struggles in the Big Dance so far?
I think it's a really deep-rooted issue. When I watch the Big Ten games compared to, I watch a lot of Pac-12 because it's up late at night and I have a sleeping problem. I really like the Big 12 this year. Watching a Big Ten game and then watching a Big Ten team in the tournament, the games are officiated so differently. Like, I really think it starts in league play. I think they call too many whistles. I think it's too they have to let these guys play, because then you get to the tournament and the game's much more free flowing. I was sitting behind the Illinois parent fan section yesterday, and they wanted a lot of foul calls. And I think in a Big Ten game, a lot of those are foul calls, but when you get to the tournament, the games are officiated so differently. I really think the Big Ten has an institutional problem where their games are super choppy and don't have a ton of flow in the regular season, and that hurts you in the postseason. I was admittedly lower on the Big Ten coming into this year. I thought the metrics, I overrated them a tad. I liked a lot of other teams. I didn't have any Big Ten teams in my Elite Eight, honestly. I was low on the league coming into this tournament. I didn't like a lot of the matchups. That being said, I definitely had a few in the Sweet 16. So I'm definitely surprised by this result, but I really think that it's a combination of some bad matchups, Loyola for Illinois, Oregon for Iowa, who I thought was vastly underseeded. That team was 20-6 and 11-3 with their point guard. You talk about Michigan losing Isaiah Livers, but I really think they need to fix some of these issues in Big Ten play, let those guys play more, let them get used to free-flowing basketball, because that's what you see in the tournament.
I completely agree with you. I think the conversation needs to be had about where does the Big Ten stand right now. They beat up on each other each and every season. It's high-quality basketball that's reflected in the metrics, and it starts a national conversation about how good this conference is, and rightfully so. It's not to be knocked when you are seeing a top 10 matchup in the middle of January between Iowa and Illinois. That is fantastic stuff, and we do not take that for granted. That being said, though, there is a reason the Big Ten has not won a national championship in 21 years. It's not just coincidence at a certain point. There has to be a reasoning for it. And I think we joke often throughout the season. There's a dialogue among the Big Ten faithful that watch every Big Ten basketball game about officiating, making jokes about Bo Borowski at his expense. But there is some credence to those jokes. There is fact behind the humor, and I think we are seeing that, unfortunately, rear its ugly head here in the NCAA tournament. Brandon Simberg, not only with incredible information about Illinois and how their season played out, but the Big Ten in general, and the point he just made there about officiating, about game flow in the Big Ten Conference, needs to be heard and needs to be taken care of, hopefully, as the Big Ten goes moving forward. Brandon Simberg, a men's basketball beat reporter for the Daily Illini on campus in Champaign, Illinois, giving you the good stuff on this sad state of affairs on the State of the Program episode here on the Locked On Big Ten podcast. Appreciate your time, Brandon. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Illinois season over. It's a bummer. I know I'm going to miss talking to you so frequently.
We'll get you back. We'll get you back pretty soon. Maybe freshen up on your football knowledge, too. We'll look ahead to the spring as well.
Okay, that's an incentive to freshen up my football knowledge. So there we go.